Now, against all the odds, even throughout 2009, when the market in Europe was dead, the China market for modern and contemporary art continued to rise. So if you'd invested, even in 2008 in Chinese art, in the modern or the contemporary market, you'd still have made a profit. Now, no other market in the West, not even old masters, kept its value through 2009, 2010. That's a sign that the China market is going in a different direction to the European and American markets. And this is a good example. This is an artist extremely famous in China, Zhang Shaogang. He was part of the political pop movement in China. And this piece, which was brought together as a triptych, like that triptych, three in a row, just like that piece over there, which is heavily undervalued, I think. This piece here made a record for the artist. I mean, I tell you, I could have bought kill myself. I could have bought this work in 1998 for about not this particular one, but this artist, for about $20,000 for a major canvas. And this piece here now sold in 2011 as a triptych for $9 million US. So yeah, I know I wouldn't be standing here, I can assure you. I would be somewhere, I'd be in Marbella probably, and I'd be listening to somebody else tell me what to do. So that's a tragedy. So anyway, this is what happened. This piece was actually lost, and then it was brought together, so it had an added value. But still, you know, he's not a particularly old artist. He's continuing to rise, and I think that's a good sign. Yeah. And this is the sort of art I'm looking at now. It may not seem very interesting to you on the surface, but actually it's quite intelligent. It's on silk, and it is brush painting, a landscape, sort of probably Sung dynasty or Tang dynasty, probably Sung equivalent. Contemporary artist, quite young, very young, 86, but it's made with Coca-Cola. It's made with melted down Coca-Cola. So it's a bit like the pop art across the wall there, but it's much more subtle. And again, it's the return to the medium of the brush, return to the natural materials. And I think artists like this, and there are many in China who are very good now, this is the new movement. And it's very affordable, and it's out there, actually. It's out there if you're interested. Since it's a photography exhibition downstairs, I couldn't not talk about Chinese photography. It's the one element of Chinese art which is, I think, not traditional, obviously, but is fascinating because it records a changing China. And that's the thing. Emerging markets, documentary photography, obviously, people will want to know what was before. And I think that's why this picture is so interesting. And Wenfeng is just a classic example. A little child, this is the past, looking over a wall into the future. So this sort of work, it has a resonance with a Chinese audience. You must always think, where is the resale market? It's going to be in Asia, isn't it? It's not going to be amongst Europeans anymore, or Americans. There'll be a resale market in China. I think this sort of work will catch people's attention. Mm-hmm. Yang Fudong, probably the most famous of the new artists in China. He's actually a filmmaker, essentially, but he does still photography as well. And he, again, he's playing with the theme of being lost in the new world. Here's the intellectual with a brick, not knowing where to throw it, isolated in a new city, which he doesn't even know the names of the streets. I mean, you go to Shanghai in 1 month, the next month you come back and all the street names have changed because the city's changed. And that's the sort of confusion. So again, he's an important artist historically. And I think he will continue to do very, very well in the resale market. Chao Fei, another very famous female photographer. She basically concentrates on the dislocation between traditional, the father, and I mean, it must be terribly shocking for Chinese parents. I mean, I imagine, in the West as well, but particularly for Chinese parents. I mean, they've gone from basically being a socialist state-run government to being people, becoming basically total consumers. So she examines this whole area of the change in consumer behavior and social behavior in China. Important again. And actually, downstairs there is a Chiu Shouyuan. This is a forbidden city, obviously, and we have a dispute about what she's trying to represent. I thought she was trying to represent homosexuality in China, but clearly there's a disagreement there. But she plays with taboos. She plays with all kinds of taboos, shall we say. And again, a significant artist in the photographic world in China, and I think a collectible future artist. Just one thing, when you buy photographs, always make sure the edition is not too large. This is 6. That would be about right. 10 is about okay. Anything more than sort of 15, 20, you get a bit nervous. It's called inflation, photographic inflation. Okay, another guy, again, taboos, nudity in China is still a difficult subject, and so obviously he is confronting these taboos. Not just China, but also in Taiwan. Now, Taiwan's a funny one. The market for art in Taiwan is very interesting at the moment, and you could look for a niche market in Taiwan. This is an artist called Chen Qichang, born in Taiwan, as I said, in Tainan in the south, and he has spent 20 or so years going to this temple in the southern part of Tainan to look at inmates who are tied together. Now, it's not meant to be for cruel reasons. They're tied together because one of them is meant to be slightly more sane than the other. And so, in a sense, they try to correct the behavior of the less fortunate one. So it's quite a sympathetic photograph. But this work and this series, which shows double happiness, basically Taiwanese men marrying Vietnamese women to get for wives, basically because they haven't got any wives in Taiwan who will marry them, is another of these social documentary issues, which I think will be, interesting for the future. But anyway, quickly, South America, not really my area, to be honest, but there are obviously markets to look at there. Mexican art is by far the largest of the markets which is dealt in internationally. And the sales are fairly reasonable, but they're not huge. Although the fall in 2008 for South American art was smaller than other emerging markets. So I don't know what that tells you, that it's slightly less risky, perhaps. I don't know. And the biggest name is Vic Muniz. He appears in a number of very major shows all over the world and tends to make copies, pastiche, of famous works of art using photography. Yeah. India, very quick in South America, sorry. India, again, the Indian market's very interesting. Again, it declined dramatically in 2008. All markets did, but has shown some recovery in 2010. Now, this is something called the Confidence Index. Now, this is a fairly good website. Basically, he interviews major collectors in the field, and the confidence, therefore, reflects the future performance of the market to some extent. Yeah, okay, and here's an example. M.F. Hussain, actually, he died a few weeks, so this is good news in many ways. Well, he was relatively old. I mean, it's not a tragedy. So his prices will, I think, really escalate now, and they must do. The problem with Hussain is, like a lot of artists who live a long time, they make a lot of work. And the last part of their work is usually not that interesting. So, again, this is a warning, be careful which part of an artist's, creative period you buy into. I mean, late Picassos are notoriously poor. So, it's not always as simple as just buying an Hussain. You have to buy the right Hussain, and that's when you have to be quite technical. Yeah. Rashid Rana, another artist who works with photography. This looks like a Persian or Afghan carpet, but actually you look around you go one side, it's a carpet, the other side, it's a slaughterhouse. So you have these two images going on here. I know it's not very pleasant, but he works with the same technique, the same company as some of the Chinese photographers. It's made in Düsseldorf, so it has a German stamp on it, a bit like a Mercedes. So anyway, he is doing very, very well, actually. I'm not a great fan of his work, but his market is very strong and shows that Indian market for this sort of work is quite strong. Iran and the Middle East, I mean, it's politics all the way, so I'll be careful what I say. Gulnaz Fatih is an example of someone who's what we call abstract calligraphy. That's the other area you might be interested in. It happens in China and also in the Arab world, obviously, with Arabic script. You get a movement which is called sakakana. It basically means drinking fountain, but it revolves around calligraphy and going back in history. So these new Arabic calligraphers are very, very interesting, and the market is loving it, absolutely loving it. There was a Sotheby's sale in Doha called Haruf, which sold out everything to Arabic collectors, actually, mainly Middle Eastern collectors. So, yeah. I'm nearly finished, so please stay. This is Dia Azawi. It's called Blessed Tigress. It's actually a sculpture. It was in the British Museum. I think it's wasn't bought by the British Museum, so I think it may be on the market actually. Anyway, I don't know. But look at it, it's a giant thing. It was 6 meters high. It's a sculpture, it's beautiful. It's got a little bit of sort of fretwork there. And it's based on the spiral minaret in Iraq, in Samarra. And again, not calligraphy, but going back and looking at architectural, in this case, architecture in Mesopotamia, Iraq. Okay, I think that's all you can stand because otherwise you will die, I know. The rest, actually, it's pretty funny. This rest of it, it's all in the book. I mean, this is Southeast Asia. Now, the only thing I'd say about Southeast Asia is huge amounts of volatility and risk in all the images here, but very, very, very reasonable. So if you want to go shopping, it's like a Walmart experience, go to South America, and you go to Southeast Asia, you'll find a lot of work. Vietnam, Indonesia, and Malaysia probably are the three, and Thailand are the three Southeast Asian states. But, I mean, it's all in the book. I mean, it's all in the book, come on.
Bueno, muchas gracias por vuestra asistencia.